Rob, when we did our podcast episode about gamification in jiu-jitsu, you talked about a sweep that you hit in Nogi Worlds.
Yes.
In the semifinals. I've never seen it before. I'm hoping you can break it down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we call this the Keenan sweep just because I saw Keenan Cornelius doing it a little while ago. And the premise of the sweep is that, I mean, cosmetically it looks like a reverse De La Riva sweep, but as we'll go over, the way that I hit it in Nogi Worlds was actually from De La Riva. But the initial understanding of the sweep is, as long as I'm in a quasi reverse De La Riva configuration, i.e. your right leg forward and my right leg kind of in front of your leg somehow, and my right hand gripping your ankle. As long as I can touch your far hip, I can do this sweep. So you can launch it out of reverse De La Riva, but it could be just any sort of open guard situation. As long as I can grab this ankle, have my hip on the outside of your foot, and my foot, so my right hip is on the outside of your right foot, my right foot is on your left hip, my right hand is grabbing your ankle. If I can perform the following three things basically at once, which is pushing your weight off of this leg onto that leg, pulling your foot along the ground, kind of like making you slip on a banana peel, and penduluming my hips and hip switching, I can perform the sweep.
That is unbelievably
Fake
powerful
looking,
and fake looking.
Yeah, that's basically how I would describe it. It's powerful and very, very fake looking. Until you experience it for yourself, it's just going to look like people are choosing to fall down for you. But hopefully it's evident from the competition footage that these guys are not choosing to just sit down for the fuck of it. The key is just the sudden weight shift, right? So basically, once I get this leg kind of off the ground, all it takes for you to fall is a slight pendulum effect with my leg and my hip. The kind of optical illusion that happens here is because I'm sweeping my leg in this direction, people think I've blocked the far foot and tripped. That's almost never the case. What's actually happening, and I'll do it more in kind of one motion here, what's actually happening is that.
You're just using it to violently turn your body.
Yeah, I'm using it to wind up and turn my hips to the other side, which amplifies the sudden weight shift. It amplifies the direction in which I can pull your ankle. So most people can stand like this. Very few people can stand like that while somebody is pushing their hip and turning their shin against their thigh. So the remaining element, the three main elements, are the weight shift, the elevation, or really sliding, almost like an ankle pick of the foot, like a banana peel slip. And the turning of the hips. But what also helps is if my shin, so my knee pit needs to be above your knee. If my shin can push your leg, that's also very helpful. Okay. And then when we land, there are a couple of options. You can pummel the leg in, you can come up, and sometimes their knee will get back into here. And this is what happens usually against really good guys. And then the third option, which is the one I try to hit, is when we land, I try to hook my foot on my partner's far hip and keep their knee above my thigh so they can't retreat their knee into single leg X, and we go directly to the mount. So most of the time I hit this, against most people, I'm going directly to the mount with it. Against really high level black belts, it tends to be just on top of single leg X is my landing point.
So how did you hit it at Nogi World? It was a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. So the basic sweep is, well, basic, and frankly, the people know that I do it. So what I deal with a lot, once people kind of are aware of it, is if I'm ever in this position, people are just grabbing both my ankles, and they're just like, "Nuh-uh, you are never gonna get this on me because you're not gonna get to touch my hip." So how it happened, we can just kind of switch. Let's go over this way. We switched to De La Riva, which is where I was in the match. So
now you're on my left leg.
Yeah, so it was on the left leg in the semifinals against the number one seed. He was approaching my guard this way, either out of just really good tactics overall, or out of having studied me and knowing that I tend to prefer to play my De La Riva on my left hip. And so he was forcing me to play my De La Riva off of my right leg, right hip, which is fine. I do that too. And earlier in the match, what had happened, so I was down an advantage. I will spare you my rant about that advantage being fully unjustified. But basically, he was trying to ride out the win. And what I had done is I had elevated him overhead, and he had retreated back into base with this knee down and this hand on the mat. And so this is where we ended up. So I had done this to him once. some more movement ensued, so I figured, okay, now I got you. And I went to do it again. He shifted back. In the process, I switched my foot, switched my grip, and switched my hip to the other side, which allowed me to then come up. He retreated back to that kind of single leg X-ish position. And this was with about 20 seconds left in the match, scored to win me the match to send me on to the finals. But basically, this was a completely novel situation in that the actual way that I did this week, like I've got a bunch of different setups for this. I'd never actually done it in that way before. If you have the BJJ Games instructional and you follow any of the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu methodology that we advocate,
Especially the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu sweeping.
In this case, Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu sweeping, I have been in so many different scenarios as a result of this. And you saw the preparation that I did for Nogi Worlds. You were there for a bit of my camp filming. And I just did a lot of Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu. So I had the luxury of transitioning.
You're eating your own dog food. You were actually training the way that you are telling people to train.
Yeah, 100%. So I did a lot of this, and I had so many opportunities to transition into this Keenan sweep from so many different positions that when this happened, it was just like it was automatic. There was no like, even though it was a completely novel application, it was seamless. Like it was just like, oh yeah, if I'm here, I can just, all I have to do is touch my foot to your hip, and I can hit this sweep. So that's kind of how it went, like on the fly. The actual sweep, I do think, as much as I'm a big advocate of games for development, I think the sweep itself does benefit from drilling. Like I learned it, mind you, I learned it in an afternoon of just repping it a few times, and I could do it, so it wasn't difficult. But the timing can be a little bit tricky, especially if people aren't familiar with how to do that sudden hip switch. It does take a little bit of just repping, and trying to do it against significant resistance is actually not super useful at first. But once you have the basics of the movement and you can just know that if your foot touches their hip and your hand is on their ankle, you can do this. Then it just comes down to your creativity and your ability to access different, adaptive situations in the moment on the fly by doing a lot of these games and developing the sensitivity to their hip is over there, their weight is over there. All I got to do is touch their hip and grab their ankle, and I'm good to go. So yeah, it's a huge source of pride for me that I won this tournament in the manner that I wanted in, where I used basically all the stuff that I am, advocating people do, the way that I teach at my academy, the way I train at my academy. I was able to demonstrate that using these methods is how and why I was able to win, despite, if you do get a chance to see my podium picture, look at them, and then look at me. Despite being significantly, physically less imposing, I was able to use this methodology to be successful.